Welcome to the Trueface Podcast. My name's Robby, and I'll be your guide as we have conversations about what we can learn from what's going on in our lives. Most of us get stuck in our relationship with God and others, and we end up wondering, is this really all there is to it? Here's a question. What if God isn't who you think he is, and neither are you? The grace-based relational discipleship resources at trueface.org help you answer that, to help you live into your true identity. And this conversation with Mark Goodman is going to help you do that. And so whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, remember to subscribe and share and join our growing tribe of Jesus followers by going to trueface.org or checking out our resources at the Trueface Life app. So on this episode of the podcast, I get to introduce you to a friend of mine, Mark Goodman. Mark, we've probably been friends 7-8 years now. We've known each other.
Yeah, good. Maybe a little bit longer. I think I had hair when we first met. It's been a while.
I don't know. I don't remember Mark with hair.
Okay. All right.
I remember the Tampa Bay themed car, and I was like, who is this Tampa Bay Bucks fan? But more than a Bucks fan, Mark is a forgiveness coach, a speaker, an author of the book Forgiving a Good Man, which is coming out. It had just come out by the time this podcast airs on December 1st. I've got a pre-order. It's coming to me in about a week, as we're a couple weeks ahead of this. But he runs the nonprofit 70x7 Path to Forgiveness. You can check it out at 70x7.org. And Mark's mission in forgiveness is unique because it combines clinical psychology, theology, and real life experiences. And I have watched this guy love people so well through walking with them, processing with them on their own forgiveness journey. And he's just been a fun friend to hang out with. And so, Mark, what did I miss, man? What context did I miss about what you do?
Just loving on people. And there's so many people that are just carrying around that backpack of pain, shame, blame. Do you know what happened to me? Childhood happened last week. I don't know who did it. I don't know what happened, but anger and resentment, we've all experienced at different levels at different times. We know how much that can drag us down and hold us back. And so I preach and teach and share the freedom found in forgiveness.
One thing I love about 70x7 is that a lot of ministries have talked about forgiveness. It's such a central element of what we are called to as Jesus followers. But you're the only ministry I know that's all you do. You help people experience freedom from the complex, difficult work of forgiveness. And it's masterful how God is a God of reconciliation, which you'll talk about today, as that's a key part of forgiveness. But he did that in your own life. I know of your story, and you've got a pretty amazing forgiveness story. So I'd like to spend time on this and just ask you to share obviously an abbreviated version of your own story of forgiveness. Give us some context as to how you got here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, we've often have childhood hurts. William P. Young speaks about that it took him 50 years to get the face of his father off the face of Jesus. And yes, I had some childhood hurts as well that I carried around with me a good portion of my life. See, as a teenager, I lived homeless in the streets of LA, literally eating out of dumpsters and soup lines. Now, as bad as that sounds, I have good memories of it because it was a step up. It was better than what I had growing up in Detroit, which Detroit itself is, not exactly a wonderful town to grow up in. Let's face it. But it was the dangers inside of the four walls from a mom and dad who were alcoholic, but a father who was abusive. Now, Robby, when I say abusive, my three older brothers, I was the youngest, my three older brothers, he used to beat them till they were virtually unconscious with his fists. My father threw my oldest brother out the front picture window. The dangers that were in there, my bedroom door had bumper stickers on it, not for decorations to hide the holes that different family members come at with a bat or a knife. But it didn't stop there. My dad sexually abused his own boys. So if you can imagine, for that to happen to a little boy is tough, but happen by your father can leave some pretty deep wounds. And it did. My oldest brother passed away a few years ago, just holding on to that anger and resentment. He took the almost like a metaphor or a modern day parable. All four boys took it different ways. And he decided to hold on to that anger. I can't release this. Do you know what happened to me? My next older brother lives in a special apartment in Florida, and he decided to put up walls of protection. So he has no friends. He lives in an imaginary world with his imaginary friends, and that's safe for him to be there, a life that none of us would ever want to live. And then my middle brother, the one who taught me business and led me to the Lord at age 15, called me. And while on that phone call, he took his own life.
Oh.
So I have experienced what that wounds of unforgiveness. Now, I know, and now you know, that on his death certificate, it said suicide, but realistically, he died from unforgiveness. He escaped with drugs and all sorts of other things till he finally escaped ultimately. Yet here I am, Robby. You know me. I'm one of the happiest people you'll ever meet, full of gratitude. I got a beautiful wife, a beautiful life. And how does that make sense other than the amazing grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the power and that freedom found in forgiveness?
I mean, it is miraculous as your friend for 7 years. I mean, it's been a while since I've heard some of those and remembered some of those aspects of your story. And just hearing about your brothers and their life, our God is, I mean, it is unbelievable. The joy and the consistent joy and gratitude you walk around with as a friend is unbelievable. So you left the house because it was safer to live on the streets than in your home. And then tell us more of the story of your journey.
Sure. I had finished high school just shortly after finished high school. So when I say teenager, late teens.
Yeah.
My other brother and he had been out to California, lived homeless already, and come back and said the freedom that nobody's there to hurt you, that it's safer, it's better out in the streets of LA than what we've got here. And so we had $330 of VW Bug. And we decided from Detroit to go to California via New York, of course. I've taken the long way my entire life. Why not to do it then? And we had a budget of $1 a day for lodging and food. And we eventually made it. By the time we made it out there, we had no food, no money left, and incredibly hungry. And the first day there, he taught me the art of day labor. And that night we got our $20, and wow, we ate like a king. It was so good. But here's the thing is, after a year of that, Robby, is I started rethinking what's missing in Detroit. I can't live like this the rest of my life. So my brother wanted to stay. So I said, give me $20, my backpack, a loaf of bread, 2 cans of pork and beans, and a jar of peanut butter. I'm going to hitchhike from LA to Detroit. And I did. Now, back then, there were no cell phones. Forget finding the body. You wouldn't even know where to look for it. And the last person to see me was my schizophrenic brother. He went that away. And I made it as far as Cheyenne, Wyoming, hungry and starving and sitting in a truck stop trying to wonder what I'm going to do next. And 2 cowboys, super nice guys, saw my dilemma and said, we can help. Place to stay, shower, great meal, clean up, get started all over again. It's like, great. I missed the cues. And I was sexually abused in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Now, here's the thing is 1 out of 4 women have been sexually abused, but 1 out of 6 men have, Robby. How
Mm.
many of the 6, 12, 18, 24 men you know other than Mark Goodman that will raise their hand up and say, yeah, that's me? Now, my grandpa gave me a bus ticket back to Detroit, and that was the last time I have ever hitchhiked in my life. But I can be honest with you. If I could find those guys today, I've forgiven them. I would take them out to lunch. I'm buying. I would let them know that what they did hurt. It was really bad. It was really wrong. But I've turned that bad into good, and I'm a happy man right now. And I have forgiven you at a level of spiritual forgiveness, just like Christ did for us, that the
Mm.
total remission, that it is gone. And that's what my hope and prayer is for others is to reach not just forgiveness, but a level of forgiveness like God has taught us.
There's two aspects of forgiveness just in that story alone with your dad and in Wyoming, that they haven't asked for forgiveness and they don't deserve it.
That's
Unpack
great.
those two blocks in a lot of our heads about, yeah, but I'm not releasing them from this because they haven't asked for it. And therefore I can't, like, it's not resolved. Unpack those.
Sure. It is absolutely the biggest misunderstanding in forgiveness. It's the
Mm.
central theme to my message, this misunderstanding that what forgiveness really is. And here's the thing is the Bible teaches us to forgive. Great stories, great inspiration of forgiveness. It just doesn't tell us how. And
Mm.
often that gets lost. So forgiveness is one side of a two-sided transaction. There's the debt. Often the Bible talks about debt. There's a person that owes you. What they did is wrong. They owe you. And I'm owed. And so often we think that we need to, even those scales of justice, they need to repent. They need to forgive. They need to go to jail. They need to fill in the blank. But here's the thing, Robby, think about that for a second. Let's just put it in logical terms. How silly this is. The very person that hurt me, I'm going to give them the keys to my future, to my happiness, to the very person who hurt me. I'm saying I cannot be free. I cannot be happy until they fill in the blank.
Hmm.
How silly is it when you think of it that way? And so, therefore, what happens is most people hold on to that, waiting for that redemption, that apology. And often it's never enough. It's never, what could my dad have ever said or done to make it enough? And so my brothers chose to hold on to that. The difference is I can release that forgiveness is only one side of the transaction. I can be free subject to nothing,
Mm.
absolutely nothing. And that's the biggest misunderstanding. Reconciliation takes two sides. That does take two sides in order to build the bridge. I'm sorry, I want relationship. I forgive you, which is part of it, and we build that bridge. That's the big difference.
So forgiveness is one-sided. I release you from what?
I release you from all complete hurt, understanding of that need for payback and revenge. The judgment, that doesn't take away the judgment. There's still, right, we have a Lord of judgment, but it's God is the judge.
Mm.
That gentleman in a black coat sitting in behind a desk in a courtroom is the judge. But no,
Mm.
we want to stick around. And as long as we want to be the judge and the jury, right, then we are one that are still being held in bondage instead of releasing that judge and judgment over to the proper person. But for me, did my dad deserve it? Do those guys in Cheyenne deserve it? No. But Robby, I deserve it. I deserve it. Um, and so often that misunderstanding holds us back to need to stick around and make sure that I get that payback.
Yeah. So when someone sins against us, the consequences of the sin, the act itself, all of it is in this bucket. And unless I forgive them of that bucket, you talked about the thing where I'm carrying around a backpack, which we all know. Like all of us right now are going, oh yeah, there has been people, there has been process of years. There was one guy in my life that I couldn't feel freedom from and forgiveness for years. And it was for a negligible thing. I mean, it was like, it was stupid. And it wasn't even a massive deal. And I was angry every time I thought about this guy for years and years and years, even though I did prayer after prayer of like, God, I forgive him, I release him. But I still felt like when I thought about this guy's face, I had blame, shame, pain, hurt, anger. It was not freedom, peace, lightness, love, joy, gratitude, which is the flip side of what I have access to. So what was stuck in me of like, it was years for this, like, and it was a HOA president who made my life miserable in building a house. He was like this.
I remember that story.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so it's like, it was so
yeah,
small, but it
yeah.
just, everything in me, it just drove me crazy for all kinds of different reasons. And it was years and years and years of like, and so I hear your story of forgiveness and I'm like, well, what is in the way of the block for me in that? Cause that's small.
Yeah, whether it's small or big, the same rules apply. It doesn't matter how big, there are people listening to this right now saying, oh my goodness, how, that is, I can't relate to that. Well, maybe it's divorce, your parents divorced, or
Yeah.
maybe just somebody cut you off on the road. All the same rules apply. What happens is they move on, they're gone, or they may or may not be out of your life. They may be passed away. Yet you're still the one that's suffering. You were a victim by that person. And by holding on to it, you are allowing them to continue to be a victim, right? And victims are powerless. Victims have no control over their lives. Victims have an excuse for any kind of behavior. I'm like this because what they did. Yet you, when you finally get free, that it is amazing. If I may, a little uh, theological liberty on this one, I would
Yeah.
greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love to, at this time, love to share the story of Matthew 18, 21, and 22, where our ministry, 70 times 7, comes
Yeah.
from. So many people know the story, but it's always in the context of looking at Jesus. And I like to equate it almost as though, now let's take it as though it happened last week. Okay? So Peter and Jesus are driving down I-75, right, in a Honda, right, because they were all in one accord. We know that. And Peter's driving, Alexis cuts him off once, twice, 7 times. And he turns to Jesus and said, how about it? I forgave him 7 times, right? And Jesus says, no, 70 times 7. In other words, we should always forgive. The reason I like to put it in that modern day context is a couple things. One, let's throw Peter a bone, right? Alexis cut you off 7 times. I don't know about me. I don't know if I'd be that forgiving. But that person goes on off to work. You don't see him anymore. What happens to you? You show up at work angry and resentful and causes relationship issues. Now your employees or your employer is upset and it's a domino effect. Right? And holding on that resentment causes all sorts of other long-term issues.
Yeah.
Instead of forgiving and be released.
This topic of forgiveness is central to the battle of that the evil one loves. I mean, the evil one's tricks are not new. It's lies and division and confusion. And in this division piece, there's no greater tool than like harboring resentment, lack of forgiveness. And it aligns with the worldview. I've been thinking a lot about the worldview of separation versus the kingdom mindset of connectedness. And we can't have connectedness without forgiveness. I know these things. I want these things. So get really practical with me in regards to my HOA story. Because this isn't 60. We were talking earlier. There's not 6 easy steps to forgiveness, which is why this is such a dynamic, difficult process that 100% of us go through, and we need others to help us navigate. Because even in the case of your brothers, one was angry, one protected, with schizophrenia in a way, and one led to suicide, and you have led to
That's great.
gratitude and joy.
That's great.
So what do you see in a lot of people's lives of like, because is it theology sometimes? Is it emotion sometimes? Is it like, what are some of the things that are preventing us to forgiving?
First of all, let me just reframe it in the sense that so often as a believer, I'm forgive in order to be forgiven. I must forgive. I'm supposed to. It's a job. Okay.
Hmm.
So instead, holding out the carrot of, would you like to be free?
Yeah.
So it starts off with just that. 1 Peter 3:9 talks about get as a blessing, right? So do not repay evil with evil or insult, with, but with blessing, because to this you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. I'm living that blessing, right? I'm an example of what, instead of angry and resentful and drugs and everything else, I'm living this awesome life because not carrying around. So likewise with you, you carried around that anger and resentment for all that time. Instead, say, you know what? There's no payback. It's not subject to him coming back and saying, I was wrong and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I choose to give a complete release of this. He doesn't owe me like a debt. He doesn't owe me. I'm going to file bankruptcy on him, and he doesn't owe me a single thing. And I am free. That's the difference. Yes.
And you're saying the carrot of the freedom pursuing, fixing our eyes on that instead of how do I forgive him? How do I release it? Like, because is that different for each person in regards to the process? What does that process look like if you're guiding me through a prayer?
In general terms, so it starts off just with the desire, like any 12-step program, right? I am making a decision that enough is enough. I've been carrying this around for too long. I want to do something about it. I'm inspired to finally let this go.
Okay.
The next step after that is actually having an accounting, back to a debt again. If you were to go to your accountant and say, I want to write this debt off, what they're going to say, what debt? Who owes you? How much? Oh, just that. Right? And if you don't get specific, it doesn't stick. You've met those people before. I forgave him a long time ago, but if his house burned down, it's serve him right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we're not quite there yet. Maybe not. So you actually have an accounting. When I decided to truly forgive my dad fully, I went back and interviewed family members and old friends and back in Detroit, right? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Anything else? And you know what I found out, Robby? It was worse. I had blocked out a lot of it out. It was worse than what I remembered it was. But if I'm going to forgive fully. And it hurts. It was painful to do that. But exactly what are you? So an accounting. And then once in front of it, saying, giving it up to the Lord. Look, I'm going to do a quick little plug again. Sorry, 70 times 7. That's 70x7.org. Got a phenomenal forgiveness prayer in there. And of walking you through that. And really 3 things when you're ready to finally get there. 3. And this is great whether you're asking for forgiveness or you're forgiving somebody else. I'm sorry for what happened. What was it that happened? But that's not good enough. For what it caused and what were the long-term consequences. Robby, I am sorry I hit you with a bat. I'm sorry it broke your arm. And I'm sorry that golf tournament you really wanted, you can't go to now. That's all on me. I'm forgiving my dad, now much bigger. Dad, Lord, I forgive those horrible things that he did. I know that it caused me to have all sorts of issues of that it has. I still have those scars today, right? And they may never completely go away. And I forgive him for what that caused. And I forgive him for the consequences of my brother taking his life, of living in homeless, of putting myself in that situation, of years and years of anger and resentment. I forgive him of that. What happened, what it caused, And what are the long-term consequences? And I'm writing that debt off. You don't owe me another thing. 3 parts. Have you ever been on the receiving side of somebody who apologizes to you that gets all that right?
As a parent, how do I instill this to a 9-year-old of the process? Because too often I go, say you're sorry, and it's
Yeah.
incomplete. It doesn't work. How would you coach me with my kids?
Sure. And that is, first of all, letting them know, right, that this takes 2 sides. Are you just forgiving somebody else, or truly you want reconciliation, right?
Yeah.
And so, assuming we want to be reconciled, so you're apologizing to reconcile with your brother, you're apologizing to reconcile with your friend. First of all, so we don't teach our kids wrong. Next, it is just, I want you to say what you did, what did it cause, and if there's any long-term consequences. I just want you to get those 3 parts right. I'm sorry I hit you. I'm sorry you have a bruise. And I'm sorry if you don't trust me with a bat again.
Yep. And so in that situation, that is in reconciliation.
That is reconciliation. But it's also, if you're asking for somebody for forgiveness. But I
Yes.
can, likewise with your HIA guy or my dad or the guy who cut me off, it's still the same applies. Look, only I'm not telling them, they don't know. You know what? I forgive them for what they did. I forgive them to the pain that it caused me. And I
Mm,
forgive them. And some of them can be really deep wounds, right? Marital, I am sorry, honey, that I cheated on you. I am
yeah.
sorry that caused that divorce. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry you may never trust a man again. You ever have a tough time trusting a man again. That's
Mm.
all on me.
And there's so those steps of like, we have to have the desire, the decision to seek freedom for ourselves. So in forgiveness, I've got to start with desire of, I've got to be free of this HOA, the anger, the hurt, the pain, the annoyance, all that stuff that he did, the disrespect. And then I have to be clear about that in accounting. I have to say, what did he do directly, indirectly, specific? What was the pain caused? And then it's on me in forgiveness to say, I'm sad about, I'm sorry that what happened, what that caused, and what the consequences were. The money, the time, the hassle, all the stuff, the hurt ego, the false accusations. And I'm going to release him of those, of any of that debt as Christ has released it to me. Now,
Absolutely.
now that is my forgiveness and freedom. With what unpack for me what it would take for reconciliation, and is that possible or not possible sometimes?
It's tough because it does take 2 sides. The beauty of it is to let you know that so many people think that they can't forgive because it's out of their control. So there's my message today is you do have,
Okay.
get out of that passenger seat, get over there in the driver's seat, take control of it. I choose to forgive them regardless of anything. You are not going to be a victim another day. So there's the beauty of it. If you're going to reconcile, now you got to bring them into the picture.
Yep.
And it may or may not work.
When do I know? Okay, this is a common question I get from people. When do I need to tell them I forgive them versus when do I not? Because forgiveness is my thing. So what's a framework for knowing when we tell them they're forgiven, which sometimes feels like, unhealthy and sometimes not?
It's often unhealthy.
Huh.
General rule of thumb is don't tell them.
Huh.
Yeah, just don't. Hey, listen, Robby, I just want to let you know I forgave you for what you did. Now, first of all, it just sounds, like, what did I do? No, remember, it's one side of a two-sided transaction. No, I'm the one that's free. And what I'm doing, if I do that, I made all this progress and I invite you to pull me right back down again. No, why go there?
Mm.
You are free. It is the psychology behind it, the theology, and the experience of it is all solid, all in alignment there. The reconciliation, now is saying, do both sides want to have relationship together
And, and,
in some
and
way,
so if
form,
I have
or other?
forgiven, it's fertile soil for reconciliation. Is it usually the person that harmed needs to, when they cross that, if the general rule is to not, like, you have hurt me, if
That's
the
good.
general rule is I need to forgive you, but I don't need to tell you you're forgiven, there might be
That's
an
good.
assumption that you and I are disconnected and broken. If you hurt me, is the general rule that I wait for the person that hurt to cross the line and say, "Hey, I'm sorry," and then at that point it's like, "Hey, I've forgiven you," and that's a conduit of reconciliation.
Let's use this as an example, right? I'm the offender and I want to change my ways and I'm willing to repent
Yeah.
and I want relationship. Therefore, can we be reconciled and will you forgive me? It's the same
Mm,
thing.
mm,
So if the other party is not willing to change, right, then stay away. An awful example is, a woman whose wife is beaten, hold on to that anger, resentment for the rest of your life will just continue to hurt you and they'll continue to be a victim. You somewhere need to forgive. That doesn't mean you want to reconcile and get back in there.
mm,
No. So let's use my dad as an example.
mm.
At age 65, my dad sobered up. My dad turned his life over to the Lord. He's no longer with us. The last 23 years of his life, that monster that should have gone to the jail for the rest of his life turned into one of the most wonderful, loving, godly men you have ever met. If you met him, Robby, you'd be saying there's no way this man equals that story. And that's the beauty of it. You're never too old. You're never too bad to find God's redemption, grace, and forgiveness. And we did reconcile. Forgive me for a second here. We did reconcile. And
Wow.
there's, right?
There's a picture. If you're listening to this on a podcast, just a picture of Mark and his
Sorry
dad.
about that. That we had a wonderful time. We were on a bowling team together, and I went to at least 100 AA meetings with him while he was sobering up. And I
Wow.
was with him when he passed away, and he became our prayer warrior. And if he met you at the store, he said, "Can I pray for you, Robby?" And you write Robby. He couldn't remember what he's praying for, but he had pieces of paper with names all over it. So as he was passing away, I said, "Dad, you do realize as our prayer warrior, sometime the next 24, 48 hours, you're going to heaven. And you're going to be there with him." And we're laughing, right? He's excited. He's going to Disney World. And I said, only thing is I want you to rewrite the prayer list and put my name on top. But anyway, so I held his hand. He hand delivered that. And
Mm.
Robby, somewhere along the line, my dad apologized to me. You know what it was? We were reconciled. I don't remember exactly. We'll say 7, 8 years along the way. We're watching TV together. Commercial comes on. He turns the volume off and he said, "Mark, I just want to say if there's anything that I did while you were younger that was wrong, I just want to say I'm sorry." Now, if that isn't the whippiest, Robby, I owe you 80 grand. Here's $6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. If my forgiveness was subject to, what would that have done to me? And you know what my answer to him was? "Hey, Dad, we're good. I forgave you a long time ago. Turn the volume back up."
Wow.
Because
Wow.
I had that. That apology had nothing to do with my forgiveness of my dad. And that's what I want the listeners to understand more than anything else.
It it is the beautiful aspect of the gospel we don't talk enough about that freedom we have. Jesus says, "For freedom I've come to set you free." Like, and it is in the forgiveness and adoption and sonship that we are forgiven, and this kingdom life of connectivity as Jesus followers, we have been shown and given this gift to give away to others, not for others' sake, but for our sake, that we live in freedom is what I hear you continuing to go back to. And that prepares our hearts, not the other person's, for reconciliation when their hearts are prepared too. And in the meantime, we're still free.
We're free. You hit on something great. Just to get started, we often hear people, you're not forgiving for them, you're doing it for you. And that's a great place to start. It really is, because it is true. It is true that you're free. But you are also in the position, especially as a believer, to be able to give this gift, this altruistic gift to the offender, the one that hurt you, and saying, I'm going to give this to you. Now, whether you're not, again, you don't have to tell them, right? But I am going to give this gift for both of us. And that's really what it is for. It is for giving. Imagine that. It's for giving. And to have that gratitude, to give thanks, it's thanksgiving. It is combined together. And when we can learn to give that to them, not just for me, there's actually a science of forgiveness. The amount of forgiveness that you will experience is mind-boggling more when you give them the gift and not just do it for yourself.
Yep.
That even though they don't deserve it, it may hurt to do this for you. You didn't earn it. You didn't deserve it. And by the giving of it, it may feel like you're taking 39 lashes. Wow. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
But I am willing to give this forgiveness to you. I benefit, you benefit. You may not even know it.
That's
and
right.
That, my friend, you're getting to levels of forgiveness that you can experience no matter how bad what happened, to be able to forgive the unforgivable.
I love the Trueface, how we describe love as the process of the giving and the receiving of needs being met. We have needs of forgiveness. It starts first with our vertical relationship with our Heavenly Father, who designed us for a relationship of love in order to redeem. He redeemed that. And so we have a need of being forgiven in order to be reconciled and redeemed. And we have that need horizontally with you and I as brothers. And so the giving and the receiving of that need being met is a beautiful thing. And this is a process. And I shared about my HOA because it took like the shame thing of like, I'm missing something. I don't believe this stuff. We're looking for that Kairos moment of like, oh, I'm free. Like it's done. How often, Mark, do you see that work over time or in a moment instance? Do you see both of those work when it comes to forgiveness and freedom?
It's generally over time. And that's why we call what we call the path to forgiveness.
Okay.
And I wish I can tell you that, and especially in the big ones, the abuse and such, that there you hit the end zone, you hit the football on the ground, and you've made it. It'll creep back. In our flesh, we're still human. They'll creep back, but the freedom is well worth it. Look, there are different levels as you're moving along, right? And we call it decisional forgiveness, emotional forgiveness, and then eventually spiritual forgiveness. There are 3 levels to it, where you just think it, to where you can feel it. Those triggers, you were triggered by him. Every time you thought about him, it triggered you, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Come on, be honest with you, Robby.
Yeah.
It triggered you.
I wanted to fight the guy every time I thought of him.
Right. But if you can move that to where you feel it. Now, when I think of my dad, I smile. I think of the great memories, right? So my trigger now is happiness, because I've reframed the way that I feel about it. I'm emotionally forgiven him, but then taking it to another level, the spiritual forgiveness, just like it is vertically, it is horizontally, that it's complete remission, as though it didn't exist, and complete reconciliation. That is the ultimate. And so I get to experience, in what I do in the front levels, of people hitting all those 3 different marks. And I don't care if you just hit the first mark, I'm going to celebrate with you all day long. But let's hold your hand. Let's go. It gets even better.
Mark, Thanks for being that example for me of the joy and the freedom that comes with this gift of forgiveness. You are that example to me when I think of you and your face and the joy from when you're hanging out at my house or when we're leading a group, watching you lead a group, or as you were leading, you were at the Trueface retreat a couple weeks ago teaching us on this forgiveness. So, thank you for being a personal friend, a partner in the ministry with Trueface. And y'all, Mark, I'll give you the last word in a second, but go check out the tools that he offers. Buy the book, Forgiving a Goodman. Go to 70x7.org. And also, we have a 4-part study for forgiveness that unpacks chapter 5 of the Cure on forgiveness and repentance. And it's called Healing Relationships. That's a study that we have for y'all's groups to navigate the forgiveness and the pain that each of us have, because we are humans and we live in a fallen world. So, Mark, what would you like to leave the Trueface tribe with?
Just if you can feel this of why Mark is so happy with so much gratitude. If you've ever been where you've had 5 days of rain and cloud, and all of a sudden the sun comes out, and it's more beautiful than ever, right? And I've lived an early life of cloud. And so I have I think I taste things that you don't taste, smell things, see things that you don't see. And it's not in spite of, but because of what I've been through, why I am a happier person. So yes, the book, Forgiving a Good Man, get into detail. That shame is gone. That mask is gone. I wore that way too long. So I will give away, though, in the sense that the ending, it does have a happy ending. Okay, so I'm sorry if you like to be surprised at the end, it does have a happy ending. And
That's all.
see too that maybe, just maybe, whatever it is, small or big, long time ago or recent, that you too can find that happiness, that joy, that freedom found in forgiveness. That's what I would like to say as the last word.
Mark, thank you. Love you, buddy.
Love you too. Thank you for all you do at Trueface. You guys are awesome.
See you, bud.